Hello, good evening, everyone. Thanks very much for coming. So we have got a speaker tonight who you're probably familiar with. He's normally on the side with Mike. Bruce Cullen. So Bruce is going to be talking about prioritization and story. We've got some people joining virtually by stream now. So just to introduce you to the Olympian Community London Champions. I'm delivery manager at I've been running this event for 5 years. We also have Bruce who joined us 2 years ago. We've been doing this. I'm doing it back in the hot season this time. We also normally have Jay with us. He's got something else on tonight. But we do have Abby, who is our most recent recruit. Abby works for Lloyd's Banking Group, which is, and we'll talk about it later on at the end, but we've got an event coming up. It's going to be Lloyd's Banking Group office. More details come at the end. So, yes. If anyone has already signed up to the LinkedIn account, you are going to the opportunity to give us a scan. And if you want more information or to want to try events that this is a good place to find it. Okay, with that, I will hand you over to Bruce.
Thank you. My mic's up already, so I'm going to put that mic on the side and grab my clicker. Hello, everybody. It's very strange to be on the other side of the table. Normally, I'm the guy kicking things off and comparing. So this is the very first time I've done a session here. I've been, as Stuart said, involved in Atlassian Community London for a good couple of years, but Atlassian communities in general for longer, and have never spoken. So it's the first time. But I've spoken other places before and other things, and hopefully this goes okay. So my session, as Stuart said, is on basically prioritization. Lots of posh words on screen, but fundamentally it's about prioritization. And a bit about me. So my career, at sort of high level, to give you a bit of depth as to where I'm coming from with these things. I spent 10 years at a company called Citrix that are a large Microsoft-focused software company. I did sort of 3 years as a software tester before becoming a technical project manager, where I ran their flagship product for sort of 7 years or so. I think the maths checks out to make that 10 in total at Citrix. So I had lots of fun challenges, and I saw as a product guy, which I obviously now am from my job title, how product can be done, and I've learned some lessons from seeing, and I've learned some lessons from doing in my subsequent career. So after Citrix, I joined a company called Squared Up. This company made dashboarding and reporting software. And this company is how I ended up getting into the Atlassian ecosystem in the end. I found they say product management is the greatest accidental profession, and that's exactly my experience. I joined as a project manager. I left as director of product. So I had a couple of different product teams, one for their cloud products, the cash cow products. I also had engineering teams reporting to me there. And during that journey, I spun out a company called Cookdown, which was a straight up startup. Me and one other guy. Also as the product guy, but also it's a startup. So what job needs doing today? Well, that's me, you know. So software testing, project management, writing the documentation. I've seen that end of the spectrum as well. After Cookdown and Squared Up, I joined a company helped found a company called IDO, which is all around the Microsoft Intune space, specifically dashboarding and reporting, before joining these guys, where I am today. So I'm the director of products and community. Most of the time is probably more products than community, sort of the way the work sort of has landed. But community-wise, aside from obviously London Atlassian community, I founded a thing called Scomathon, which was a Microsoft community around a monitoring tool for Microsoft back in 2020 as part of Squared Up. Atlassian, well, it's now called Atlassian Reading. It was originally called Atlassian Maidenhead. I founded that when I was at Squared Up because I wanted to see whether that would work, whether it had to be London to make it work. And the answer was yes, it does have to be London to make it work. Sad news for me. So we went through a few different names: Atlassian Maidenhead, Atlassian Thames Valley, before landing on Reading. And that speaks to where we moved around to try and find people. Of course, Atlassian Community Events London here. And I'm involved in a Microsoft community as well called Experts Live UK. I'm the host of their podcast, Experts Live UK Community Voices. So a whole bag of bits, basically, has been my career. But the more sort of relevant pieces are the product sides of things here. Because I've seen it done at big companies. I've done it myself at sort of scale-ups, and I've very much done it at the startup end of the spectrum. So we'll see what you make of today's content. A quick agenda. I normally don't do an agenda because I find they're a bit sort of stilted, but just to kind of do a bit of scene setting, we're going to start off with why do you even care about prioritization? Why is this even a thing worth talking about? Especially for those of you online who click across at any point. Why is this even important to understand? Once we've understood that, we're going to look at a few different methodologies, prioritization methodologies. The first one being RISE, which is a sort of off-the-shelf methodology. What is it, and how do you implement it in Jira if you care to do so? We're also going to look at one of my own cooked-up ones. This is called DUCE. I had to give it a cutesy little acronym so that it was memorable, but the nub of it will explain sort of the why behind why I invented it as well. And then I'll share a bit of my experience as to how these two things have played out for me as far as prioritization is concerned. And that's where we're going to go. So why is prioritization so important? Before we get into this slide and explaining this graphic, hands up here who's a product guy, product manager of some sort. Sort of like half the room. I'm seeing some half. This is good. Half is a very common route into being a full hand up. If you would like to make that transition, I'm sure you'll find somewhere someone that will take you on. But my experience of this very much is there is no shortage of opinions. There's no shortage of we should do this, we should do that. The problem is figuring out which things to ignore and which things to do. And so my lived experience looks sort of like this. So you've got customer success going, oh, we've got some customers that have great ideas over here. Do this one. This one's really important. We've got a pet project from our CTO. This has been my reality a few times where the CTO thinks something is really, really cool, but no one else does. And they're trying to get you to prioritize it. They're the CTO, so they're kind of important. But at the same time, they're not a customer. They're not going to buy the thing they want you to prioritize. You've got engineering, varying degrees of whining about tech debt versus like there's a security thing over here. We have to deal with this. You've got that to prioritize as well. Support. Please leave time for fixing my customer bug fix because they can't do X at the moment. Please, can you help me? And of course, my least favorite of all of these ones is the sales guy who comes in and goes, yeah, if you don't do this, my Q2 deal is sunk, so get this done. That has been my lived reality more times than I care to mention, not just in product, but in projects, products, both. But they all have valid viewpoints and they all come to you with suggestions, as well as the actual customers you're speaking to. You've only got one engineering team. You've only got 24 hours in the day. What are you going to prioritize? It's the most important topic ever. And to kind of make this point, yes, this is me looking bewildered. I forgot to put this in here. This is kind of my actual current reality. I've joined this company, Remo 3, sort of like 8 weeks ago. Hopefully nobody from my day job is listening to the stream because, this is my current reality, effectively. I've got all these different opinions swirling around. It's like, what do I do? I'm the new guy. Which thing do I prioritize? Why is this so important? Aside from the fact there's lots to prioritize, this is the Microsoft stock ticker over time. And you'll see it's looking kind of healthy. It's trending up. Now, obviously, Microsoft, if you include the .com boom as well, over time, zooming out even more, dot-com boom was a really big deal for tech in terms of company valuations being inflated, which is this sort of point here. Oh, this thing isn't working. Here, around 2000, 2001. And in the context of Microsoft's growth, this is a blip. This is nothing, which says that the products they make fundamentally are products that customers want to spend money and buy. So they got it right. And it's not to do with nice ideas or whatever. It's to do with killing things that don't work and prioritizing things that do work and are sellable. By contrast, of course, we've got Nokia. Look at their story. The dot-com boom was the only time they had a nice blip. And now they're worth €7 a piece. Why? Their strategy was feature phones. I'm sure some of you are of a similar vintage to me to remember Dom Jolly screaming into his oversized novelty phone. This effectively was their thing. And when the world started to change, when BlackBerry came out, when the iPhone came out, more importantly, they didn't change. What does that mean? Well, they're not really particularly relevant anymore. They could have been iPhone. They could have been iPhone. They could have been Apple, but they weren't. So prioritizing the wrong thing had really, really severe consequences. Hopefully I've made my point clear. Now we're going to look at some prioritization methodologies that hopefully will give you some tools to work with to kind of prioritize your mountain of things to do. We're going to start by looking at rice. By rice, I don't mean the food. While this is a picture of paddy fields, that isn't what we're going to be talking about, unsurprisingly, today. Rice is a prioritization methodology from the guys over at Intercom, a ITSM tool, service desk tool. What does it mean? The R stands for reach, the I stands for impact, the C stands for confidence, and the E stands for effort. And they've clearly picked words that make a nice little acronym. Reach, in reality, is loosely how many customers will be impacted by the thing you're talking about prioritizing over a given time frame, which is typically, or in my experience, a year. Impact, how big is the thing in question from the perspective of business goals? Business goals is business is the key word in that, not just goals, but business goals, which normally look like driving revenue in some shape or form. We've got confidence, which is how confident do we feel about all the elements we put in here. Because if you're not feeling particularly confident, you might think this could be the next big thing, but it doesn't mean it's worth prioritizing. And then we've got effort, which is loosely how many man-months worth of effort is this thing to actually bring to life, to prioritize. And all of these things are combined into a formula, which looks like this. Reach times impact times confidence divided by effort equals just 4. And so to sort of make it real, I'm going to steal some feature examples from my past lives as a product guy of things that I've been tasked with prioritizing. AI-powered auto remediations. Ooh, AI in the title sounds exciting. The reality, maybe, let's see. It sounds like it could be very impactful. Let's say for a second, we're working in a company with 4,000-ish customers. If that's the case, and I've said, well, our reach is 1,000 customers, which was kind of my actual reality when I had to prioritize this real feature for a real sort of company I'd worked for. Why? Why so low? Why not everyone? Well, you know, our customer base was very enterprisey and sort of security was important. There were quite a lot of AI skeptics in the sorts of target audience we were going after. Fair enough. It means a limited reach. But I mean, 1,000, that's still a good number. Our impact, we think it will be fairly high. Of course, there's the customer angle. There's also the investor angle, which was sort of relevant in driving this. Then we have the confidence. Well, 70%, I mean, that's pretty good. That's not too bad. There might be a few more customers. There might be a few less customers. The kicker is the effort. This was a load of work to attempt to bring to life. 300 man-months of effort. So you run all this through the formula, you end up with a rice score of 0.6, which is, at this stage, to everyone, an irrelevancy. It's a number. The way in which we decide which thing to do is by comparing it to other features. So for my second one, I'm going to look at something that sounds a little less exciting. A knowledge-based article integration when creating a ticket. You all know the feature. You go to a help desk and you go, oh, the thing is broken, and it gives you suggestions, suggested KB articles. Not particularly exciting, not particularly ritzy. So from a prioritization perspective, AI or this thing over here? Well, the reach of this is potentially quite great. A reasonable number of customers interact with support, so the reach could be significant. And we spend quite a lot of time on support. So the impact could also be reasonably great as well. Confidence, well, maybe I've overinflated the reach a little. I don't know. I feel slightly less confident, let's say 60%. And the effort, well, the good news is this is cheap because this is basically search. We found a component we could get off the shelf that would basically help with most of the work. So run this through the scoring system. 72 is our score. So, okay, the AI thing sounds very cool, but this is telling me we should prioritize the KB article work. Interesting. So, I'm now going to show you how to go about implementing this in Jira. It's worth saying before I get into this that there is some native stuff around RISE in Jira Product Discovery, JPD, which I found entirely by accident when trying to put together this demo, because I found half the fields I was trying to name were already in Jira because of Jira Product Discovery. And I'm going to use Rovo, which is Atlassian's AI answer to do this. So let's have a look at what I'm going to do. This is my prompt, which is already in my clipboard, essentially. I want to calculate RISE score, which should be stored in a custom field called RISE score, and is calculated using data in these custom fields. Here's the formula. Should be fairly straightforward, I hope. Fingers crossed. Let's see how this works in reality. This is where we go, fingers crossed, and hope the real demo works. So we're in Jira, and we're looking at my list of tickets. And if I open one, I have, these are just standard custom fields, no sort of magic here. Custom fields on a tab, one for reach, impact, confidence, effort, and our calculated RISE score. So if I were to change these, let's make this 500, reach for a second, and save it, and then close it and reopen it, we will see that the RISE score has been updated. So the intention is to get to this stage, which clearly it's a demo I've already built, but I want to show you how I got there effectively. So if I go to this tab here, this is essentially the settings for the project in question, the space, they've renamed them to spaces, project in question. And we're looking at automation here. We could go ahead and build this manually. Let me go back to all the rules quickly. But I've got at the top here a Create with Rovo button, which looks very shiny and entices. And let's see what happens when we click it. We were asked, unsurprisingly, to paste in our prompt. It should be in my clipboard. It's the same one as was in the slides. I'm going to now hit Preview rule and see what it gives me. Now, fingers crossed, this just works. So the structure it has created, to me, looks correct. We've got a trigger, which is when the work item is updated, we want this to run. So that would mean any of the fields on the work item, when any field is updated. It's then going to create a variable called RISE score, sounds reasonable enough. And in that variable, it's going to put this, or the calculated answer to that formula, which looks like this. So we've got custom fields in here for all the various bits and pieces. At a high level, that looks reasonable to me. However, the next thing it's going to do, which proves it isn't reasonable and will not work, is it's then going to update a custom field called RISE score. Except, oh no, this custom field is not supported. That's because it doesn't exist. It didn't actually look up the custom fields. So this will not work. The structure is correct, but this, sadly, will not work, which is where we go back to slides. We're now going to have a look at how we do this manually without Rovo, because sadly, it isn't going to work at this stage with Rovo. The structure, doing it manually, is exactly the same as Rovo came up with, and that structure will work for real. The issue is the formula and the fact it didn't look up the fields. So the trigger, completely correct. Work item updated. Our smart variable is a math expression, and this is the actual correct formula. So Rover got the syntax correct, it just didn't look up the custom fields. And these are my actual custom fields for reach, impact, confidence, and effort. And then we're going to update our custom fields with our score. And so that's what we're going to now do. You kind of get the feel from what I kind of built here. So what I'm going to do is cheat. And I'm going to use the formula, which I showed you in slides, from my notepad file, copy paste. So I'm going to watch me type it. And we're going to build one from scratch. We're going to discard this, and we're going to create a new rule from scratch. The first thing we want to do is to find our trigger. It's a work item trigger, and it's when an issue, a work item, whatever they're calling them these days, is updated. So I could browse for it, or I could type it and search for it that way. So when a work item is updated, then we want to create a variable in which we're going to do the calculation and store the result. Let's call this price variable. Oh, yes, autocomplete. Perfect. It's like I've done this before. So autocomplete has completed it correctly, and it looks like it's actually put in here custom fields correctly too, just to be sure. Paste it from my clipboard. Then, what do we want it to do? We want it to update a custom field. I think it's called edit work item. And we're going to specify which field we want it to edit. And this is my rice score field, this guy here. Available fields, great. And we're going to specify the variable name, which I provided in the previous step, and which is rice variable. Yes, autocomplete, I love it. So this would then get a name and be saved. But because I didn't trust the demo would work, what I've done is, okay, so fat-fingered something or whatever, is I've pre-built it. So that's why earlier on when I was showing you it working, that's because it really was working because I'd already set it up. So this is a blank issue with no data on it. Let's put in some values here just to illustrate how this would work. 80% confident, score, an effort score, let's say 50. Go yes, let's save all of those things. We'll close it. We'll go back into it. And with any luck, it's calculated our ICE. So this is super useful because at scale, you're not going to have people fiddling around with calculators or some bulk export import thing. You're just going to want the tool to tell you, because this then gives you a field that you can see in filters and sort by to give you which thing do I do first. Sounds fantastic, does it not? What's the problem with it? What's the problem with rice? Any thoughts on what's wrong with this solution, please?
Well, the question is send the numbers.
Which is very
Yeah. Also, you can't just sometimes send the number because you need more investigation, you need more people. And yes, so this is really big.
Who sets the number is a completely valid point to make. The level of accuracy is an interesting point. I'll pick up on that later, if I might. Any other thoughts on what's wrong with this? What's wrong with it? It can be absolutely accessible and useful. Any other thoughts, please?
Yeah, so we work in a regulated industry, and so now it's on one kind of you can click. So it's a very quiet and applies rice schools in prioritization.
That makes sense. Yeah, I can see that being a problem in a regulated environment for sure. Any other thoughts?
I think over a period when we will be actually building this, the way we are defining, let's say, it's the confidence level. It's kind of an estimate. It has got an element of assumption associated with it.
Yeah.
So right now I'm defining it as the risk of the customers. But we can make it down to the customers.
Yeah.
Or it might increase more. So that will eventually decrease or increase the price.
Yeah.
This is one thing. Also, with respect to confidence, yes, I feel that today, starting out that is things will go fast, things will go very. But as and when we go into the field, so it in effect affects the rise score, which is the epitome of necessary criteria. So that can go on.
In my experience, it depends on who you ask to fill in the fields, it depends on how, what sort of numbers. If I got a sales guy to fill this in, the reach would be fantastically big. The impact would be the biggest thing ever. They wouldn't be able to talk to the confidence, apart from, how confident are they? They'd be able to sell this thing. They wouldn't be able to speak to efforts. If you ask an engineer to fill this thing in, you're going to get very different numbers. Because I don't know what the reach is. I don't know. 2 customers have spoken to me about this so far. So I'm going to put 2 in. Whereas the sales, well, it's a massive. The town is massive for this thing. So there's definitely something about how it's filling this in and the level of accuracy about that data. For me, the biggest problem was that there's no mention of money. Now, it's not about you guys. When I'm trying to sell something internally within my company from a priority perspective, it's so much easier when there's a large dollar sign against it than a small dollar sign against it. And that reason alone, we'll talk about all the other bits of feedback, which are all entirely accurate. You've listed. But that reason alone was why I created another method called DUCE. I had to give it a cutesy acronym, as I said, tennis, the joy of tennis. It's really, really similar, but the thing I wanted to incorporate was the D in DUCE, which is deal size. The money, show me the money. This particularly resonated in a company, the company I was at the time, which was very sort of sales oriented. And so there's a piece in terms of which methodologies you pick about knowing the company culture and the company politics, because there is no one size fits all as far as methodologies is concerned. So this worked at the company in question. It wouldn't work everywhere. So we've got D for deal size, U for user count, C for confidence, and E for effort. Deal size, obviously, the total deal value, that is either to be won, will be lost. The renewals point was at risk, and the at-loss piece. I've been in situations before where if you don't deliver this feature, we're not renewing. Like, well, they might be, calling our bluff. They might mean it. Who knows? But I've had that situation before. User count. How many actual people rather than hypothetical people want this feature? This is customers, basically, named accounts, either prospects or customers. I liked the fact when I built this, that this was actuals rather than kind of finger in the air guess. It felt more accurate to me. The same with deal size. Confidence is the percentage piece. How accurate or inaccurate are the numbers? Clearly, Nick's from Rice. This came after Rice. And the same with effort. How much effort will it take to build? So those are the bits and pieces that I put into the scoring system. It's more or less the exact same calculation because fundamentally it works. You want to multiply by confidence because take down the overzealous. Oh, it's a massive deal sales guy gives you, or what if a customer churns, and the effort factor is sort of material. But this is what will has for me ultimately calculated my DUCE score. So we're going to look at those same examples now, my AI-powered auto remediations feature. So now we know a bit of extra information. So we've got 30K's worth of deals, and we've got 3 customers. The other 2 pieces are exactly the same. With those 2 parameters being different, we get a different score. Again, irrelevant unless we compare against feature number 2. So this one, remember, 210. Then we have a KB article ticket. So this is a smaller deal size, but we think we can actually be revenue to it. Now, this is a bit interesting because it's not a direct deal that you're making or losing as a result of this feature. Hold on to that because I'm going to ask you what's wrong with this approach in a minute. So the deal size for this one, let's say it's $5,000 and 3 customers. The other values remain unchanged, 60% confidence, 50 man-months worth of time. So this gives us lower score. So in other words, this methodology becomes the other one, the AI one, over this. Okay. So what do I do? And you're going to find this with every single methodology. You can run all the numbers through all the systems and feel you're confident. The reality is it's not possible to have that confidence. So,
What's wrong with my one?
well, have a sip of my Guinness to celebrate St. Patrick's. Any thoughts? I won't be offended because I know some flaws in my system.
So just explain the confidence again, that's relative to the other jobs that have been prioritised previously.
How confident are you in the other measures that are in this scoring system? So how confident are you in your deal size or user count and your effort within the context? Because like, in particular effort, I mean, and deal size, salespeople are always super confident in their deal size, obviously, even though they're not usually right. Engineering are more like, well, we've got an effort estimate, but we're not super confident in it. Yeah, good question.
I'd say that this is pushing you to reduce risk too much.
Okay.
Because if you're more confident in effort, that might mean that the effort might be smaller. But confident means you don't know or in size.
Yeah.
So there's an opportunity there. You want to take risks sometimes. Like if you're 10% confident, this will kill all such features. But somewhere there, low confidence, they'll be the best features, for example. So like if someone is an entrepreneur building software, I wouldn't be this averse to this.
Makes sense. I will comment in a minute. I'm not just it.
There's a big variability in terms of instability in the company. Size as well as the efforts.
There is, yeah.
Costs.
Makes sense. Makes sense. More variability than is desirable. Any more?
Yeah, so when you talk about the other side, you also include like savings.
That is the key point. For me, that is the key point. For me, that's the key point. That's the key point. We'll come back to that in a minute because I addressed that in a slide. But yes, fundamentally is the answer. My view of the answer, anyway. Any more views?
Is the plan our view?
Yeah. Well, let's say for a second, but the reality is it's subjective, isn't it? If it's the sales guy, it's going to be a bigger number because they were very optimistic about the range of deal sizes. In my experience, if it's an engineer, they might be a bit more modest. If it's a product guy, maybe something in the middle. But your point is valid, and that depends on who inputs the data, depends on what you're going to sort of get there.
I'd say it's actually what Nokia done, which is this is going to prioritise high features, which is what Nokia done, while Apple wasn't focused on features in the early days, they were focused on quality.
Another key point.
The problem is that it's very feature heavy on prioritisation and not that nice little, let's fix some bugs, let's get some consistency and like that, which obviously hard to measure with customers sometimes, yeah.
Very true, very true. I think it's another key point. I'm going to move us on and take us back to the title of the session. I haven't talked about qualitative or quantitative particularly in this session. I have talked about quantitative scoring, but the thing that I think both my own system and Rice miss out on is the qualitative piece. Quantitative being things you can measure, typically numerically, deal size, number of customers, how long it takes to get out into production, failed deployment rates, whatever. Things you can measure in numeric terms are quantitative. And that is all we've been talking about, What we haven't been talking about is qualitative, which is loosely the stuff you get from a survey that can't be measured numerically. So it doesn't fit a nice framework, which is very frustrating because I'm personally, I built DUCE because I wanted a nice framework. This is what was prioritized. But this is what you lose. You miss all of the, how do you actually use this plugin? What does that button mean for you? All that kind of stuff. And another piece, to your point, that you miss is all that stuff around not just incremental change, which is let's add a new feature. I'm sure Nokia were doing something like this. Let's add Snake 2 to make Snake 1 better. And, you know, I'm sure there was a team on that. They would have had to prioritize the work to make Snake 2 a thing. And don't get me wrong, great game. Got a lot of time for Snake 2. But, like, if it's that or let's make a touchscreen phone, that's
technology
rather than incremental change, which would be missed without this type of data. So why do we need both? I think I've kind of made this point already, but basically it comes down to a balanced judgment call, a balance between the quantitative and the qualitative, and that is so important. And why product management is going to always require a level of judgment, and why I can't simply give you a cutesy scoring system and say, use this and everything will be fine, because that is not reality, my friends. This is not the way the world works. If you do either one of these scoring systems alone, I'm not saying don't do them, do them and use them in conjunction with your brain and the other sources of data to make balanced judgment calls. And that's really the key point I wanted to leave you with, as well as some homework. Aside from obviously researching further the prioritization frameworks I've given you, which you could do, this is where I'm going next. This is my research for me as much as research for you. This is a book called Money Stories by Rich Mironov. Sorry, should have remembered how to pronounce this name first. Sorry for listening. But his book is all about finding a monetary value for everything that you do, which speaks to your point earlier around things like tech debt. Tech debt is really hard to fit into one of these sorts of frameworks, because how big a deal is it from a deal size perspective? Like maybe not directly any deal. And the RICE system, because it's so subjective, you'll miss things like tech debt and you'll end up with them being not prioritized. And the same is true for those sort of step changes in technology. Let's do something entirely different. Let's do an iPhone. Now, what this book is all about is finding ways of attributing monetary values to everything you do. Because at the end of the day, going back to those share price at the beginning of this presentation, that is what it all kind of comes down to. Without features and products fundamentally that are sellable to customers, you're not got a business. And that's what it all comes down to. So this is my research for me as much as for you. When I've done the reading and I've learned the lessons and I've used my new company as a guinea pig effectively for this. Sorry if you're watching folk from Remo 3, you're getting this at some point. This is where I think the closest thing I've found to a nice framework that lets me sort by a column. So that's my takeaway for today. There is also a RICE template from the nice folk at Atlassian. There's one in Confluence. This QR code will take you there. And there is a second QR code and place for RICE framework information in I think this is a blog actually, but it's tied to Jira product discovery. So these are worth looking at as well. Again, use these frameworks in conjunction with your brain. Don't use them in isolation, is the message. But they are still valuable, because sometimes you've just got so much noise. You can't engage your brain all the time. It's just not possible. So those are my takeaways from today. We've had good questions throughout. Let me go back so you've got the QR codes and see, are there any questions? And the best question, I should have said this at the beginning, is going to be the proud owner of this wonderful Atlassian community thermal mug. I have one myself. They're very nice. Exactly. They were always a good bit of swag is always a reason to engage. So let's see if there are any further questions. We already had some.
I'll briefly talk to you about the question. So I went to an event recently hosted by Chapman, and then all the Southern was there doing a market around certain like YouTube shorts, Instagram reels, marketing. And he gave it to my managing director there. She will be watching this later, so hello. And he talks about payload prioritization, which she's very excited by. It's the whole concept of surprise. what views and opinions on the
I haven't looked into enough detail, but it's actually on that second QR there. It's mentioned on there. So I haven't looked into it yet. Surprise is important. Delight is important in a product sense, for sure. It's just, I think my fundamental point is always going to be there is not going to be any scoring system that takes away human judgment. But as far as the Kano model is concerned, I haven't looked into it in enough detail to be able to give you a proper answer to the question, I'm afraid. But good question all the same. Are there any other ones?
Not so much a question, but it's a development. Really good, probably about 20 years, 20, 30 years, I think the innovators style now.
Yes.
It looks at a lot of industries how they don't get a lot here.
Yeah.
Give you an example of that would be the whole system. With innovations which are rational because their customers and say we want more capacity at these huge disks. So what basically, then when we copy this tag, then they've got why would something possibly wasn't simply such used or then like the chips, the parts and smaller and scaling up and here we are. And so we are this company, storage companies, and we went out and did this because they had done a lot of this stuff, inside of the house. But that's quite fascinating. But we got a lot of customers on the constant side of things. We use a lot of things to say, like if I wait to shoot first, I remember as it resonates quite when all the customers do guesses that if you're not interested in that, you're doing the guesses. I'm quite interested in
That makes sense. So if I understand that correctly, it sounds more like delivering an MVP to get the deal across the line, and then if you need to iterate, only if you need to iterate later.
Sort of, I mean, there's two elements to that. So the third thing is like, yes, you need to be rational in product development. You also need to always have that skunk work side of things, that element where you can be agile. Again, classic example is 3M as opposed to that. They were actually trying to get the strongest glue possible. And then they invented the weakest glue possible, and they thought, I'll get it with once, and then they found an application. At the same time, lots of product companies.
It is, and you do need both. One of the weird things I ended up doing at Squared Up was running their innovation lab, and it was all about the latter. And most of what we did was basically a waste of time, fundamentally, because you don't know when you're coming up with something that's a sort of key change in technology, but it's going to be any good, fundamentally. But it's not about that. It's about finding the goal, one golden nugget. But it's hard. It's really hard.
That's a part of technology, like the right culture and the right executive sponsorship. That's the part.
I think culture. If your culture is not conducive to innovation, regardless of whether you believe innovation and a key change in technology is super, super important, it won't happen for you. You've got to know the shape of the culture and the politics of your organization to make any real change, I think, personally. Thank you. One at the top there. Would you mind? It's funny, the mic is for live streaming, so it doesn't appear to do anything in the room, but it does. Promise, I promise.
Just the way of working.
The thing I like a framework for is where you've just got a sea of pebble, iterative change, because thinking of my own product backlog in my new world, I've been at this company for sort of like, 6-8 weeks. There's more in there that I can get my head around. So a framework is useful for surfacing the top 10% of that backlog and going, well, this 10%, the framework has decided is worth my brain space. But I will separate mentally that from actual innovation. And for me, that's iteration rather than innovation. But I do appreciate a framework for that. There's so much going on. There's so much noise. And from my perspective, you need a way of going, well, of all this noise, what's the top chunk of noise I should listen to and is signal rather than noise? One thing I would say about that, aside from a score, is I always will have a column where I'll put the customer name, which customer has directly asked for this prospective customer, because they aren't all of equal value. So you might have 2,000 customers, but if 1,000 of them are, 2-person startups versus global enterprises, I might prioritize things slightly differently. So I want the data to be able to make an informed judgment based on. But that starts with a framework, so I'm at least looking at the right bits of the backlog rather than just, here's a massive pile of pebbles, have a nice day, which is the alternative. Hopefully that answers your question. Thank you. Any more? One at the front, 2 at the front. And while the mic's being passed down, I'm just going to check where the pizza is, because it was meant to have been here by now. So, and that's on my phone, which is here. And I got a text from Uber to say it was on the way. So I'll get you to ask your question while I'm logging into my phone.
Yeah, so I think this is simply use some prioritization system. If you use with some defensible, but I think it doesn't work with because here you should feel stuff. I'm not sure that we believe that some prioritization system can help you.
Help, yes. Fix, no. And that's where the brain comes in rather than just a system. And this is my fundamental point. No single system is going to fix your problems. No single system is going to fix all your problems. So no, it will help because they'll be looking at the right chunk of the backlog for incremental change, but it wouldn't help with, let's say, a key change in technology. For that, you need a culture of innovation, which starts at the top, fundamentally. If you haven't got execs that are up for innovation, you're looking at incremental change, and that's what you're going to get. So yes and no.
My question is more specific to the advancement process. So with the advent of AI and the role that we have, specifically for advancing, just want to know your views on, like, yes, we can define, frameworks like rights and things and others. But even with the role AI stuff, we can get the prioritization done. Think of this scenario that we have got a set of backlog where we have got initiatives, we have got ethics, we have got infrastructure changes. Now, I can go ahead and straight away tell robot that please go ahead and look into my backlog and decide for me what should be prioritization. The sequence of prioritization which I should opt for. Yes, that is a high factor technically. When we will apply as a system. What we do, it will go ahead and look into different projects and different projects of a lesson. For example, it can commitments to have references of what are the tags, what is the techniques that are being defined as part of the product. It can get insights from Jira line where the actual corporate definitions of, let's say, okay definitions and other definitions are defined. There's strategies and rules are defined. So it can curate and if you think about a fundamental thing, so going in this era of AI, might be, I should say yes, might be more famous, but isn't it a better way of taking AI as an advantage and getting rather than moving by the strategy or the rules for we spoke or
The answer is both. AI is as good as the data you give it, and if you were to give it a score, it would help. But the thing that's great about AI, all of those Teams transcripts from all the customer discovery calls I've ever done, the fact it can mine those and go, well, 20 customers have mentioned the word app testing, the phrase app testing. You should probably listen to that. It's another data point. So both is the answer. The more data you've got to feed AI, the better an answer it's going to give you. That doesn't mean you should bin off scoring systems like Rice in favor of let's just ask AI. But it means you should use both because it can access all the stuff, data that you can't process manually. Yeah.
Leverage exciting service comes, so you can actually.
So I was annoyed when
Before they publicly announced it, they haven't got
Microsoft Teams connector. And I was on the verge of doing a startup about initially building a Teams connector for Rovo for that purpose, exactly for that purpose, from the perspective of product with a friend who I did co-found the other startup with. And then Atlassian announced they're doing it. Like, damn it! Because that is so valuable. All of that value from discovery calls is locked in these transcripts and recordings. But yeah, this is a very good question. Are there any more? And if not, thank you. This is probably the point. I hand over to Stuart to talk about our next event.
Yeah, so we've got another event coming up. We managed to get the Gresham Street Lloyds Banking office, and we also managed to get somebody from Lloyds Banking Group, and also Justin, who's here, who's talking as well. So we're really looking forward to that one. So if you want to, QR code there. Otherwise, if you're here, you're going to get we should have already got an email about this event as well. Feel free to let your friends know, bring anyone that you want to send a link, and yeah, hopefully we'll see you on the 22nd of April. We're going to live stream again, and obviously you can come along in person, and yeah. So now I've got to think of a way to film until the pizza arrives, which current estimation is 7:30, but we'll phone and see where it is. It'll be here by 7.
It's only half an hour late. Well done, guys. The one thing I would say about this event is the best events, in my experience, are the ones where you've got a case study, and this is a real life case study in the form of what Lloyds have done. If you're willing, I'd like to get you to say a few words about the project that you undertook and give us a bit of a spoiler as to what we expect from your session. That's the way of filling some time.
Yeah. I've spoken for the past year or so with the person about the migration. So I would but also technical application specialists at the bank, which has just done a massive migration from data center Jira. So it's going to be a talk about DUCE, the engineering team, and it's just going a deep dive into the migration journey from the data center, and the behind the scenes of lessons learned, and that's a big piece of what we're learning about. And what something roses either very cool. to the accounts. If you got that this month, so please do scan the QR code.
Thank you. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Thank you. Oh, there were lots of good questions and lots of really good engagement. I want to give this to you, good Sarah at the front. The AI question is very relevant in the context of everything we're doing because it's the only way you're going to access all of the data your organization has. So thank you. So, thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. Hopefully the pizza will actually be 5 minutes rather than 35 minutes. 7 o'clock here. First time for everything, I guess. So please hang around for that. And in the meantime, get yourself a drink. There's a fridge. Yes. And chocolate. And please, chocolate and pens. Many a pen. Sorry for the
I'm not willing to post you pens.
Thank you very much. And until next time, thank you. Thank you.